Hello guys and welcome back. Today we will be going over finding identical notes using the unison method. First I'm going to start by showing you the fretboard with all of the C notes. Here you can see all of the locations of the natural note C on the fretboard. As you can see, the first note C is on the lowest string E on the 8th fret. Now let's see how we can find the same note on all of the adjacent strings. You could sit and memorize the fret location string by string, or you could use the NANDI method of using fretboard logic to figure out the exact number of frets you must move up or down on an adjacent string. Once you can understand the math behind note locations, then you do not have to rely on memorization to figure out a note or an interval's location on the fretboard. An identical note on E to A to D, D to G, and B to E will always be 5 frets down on the next string. Of course, the exception here is moving from the G to the B string, in which we will get to in a little bit. Let's see why in this case. So the majority of the guitar is tuned in fourths, which means E to A or D to G is a fourth apart. The exception here is G to B, which is a major third tuning. A fourth equals 5 half steps. Let's talk about unison, which is 0 half steps. The distance from a note to the same note with the exact same pitch is a unison interval. So if you are on C at the 8th fret, for example, and you want to find a unison, meaning the same C with the same pitch, you will find it 5 frets below on the A string. Subtract 0 from 5 and you will get 5. Remember, half steps is equal to frets. Essentially, whenever I mention half steps in this video, I'm also talking about frets. Now let's use an example to try this logic out. Let's take a look at fret number 5. If we hold down all of the strings on fret number 5, we get the notes moving from top to bottom: A, D, G, C, and E. If we look at the open A on the 5th string, we can see that it is 5 frets below the A on the 5th fret of the 6th string. We can use a similar explanation when looking at the 5th fret on the A string, which is D, and the open 4th string, which is also D, as well as the 5th fret on the D string, which is G, and the open string on the G string, which is of course G. Now, we do have a situation when moving from C to C on the G to B string set. As we know, the G to B is tuned to a major third, or 4 half steps. 4 minus 0 gives you 4 frets below. So C is on the 1st fret instead of being on the open string like the other notes. Finally, the last note E is on the B string. You can find an identical note 5 frets below on the open E string, or 1st string. So far, we have identified identical notes on a lower fret on an adjacent string. Now the question is, how do we find them on a higher fret or higher string? Remember, an octave has 12 half steps or frets. On a single string, an octave is 12 frets higher. That is the reason you find all of the open notes repeating at the 12th fret. Going back to finding identical notes on a higher fret or adjacent string, we subtract 5 from 12 to get 7. So an identical note on an adjacent string is either 5 frets lower or 7 frets higher. C is found on the 8th fret, though if you want to find it on the 5th or A string, you can either go 5 frets down to find that C on the 3rd fret, or 7 frets up on that 5th string to find it on the 15th fret. You can also go an octave or 12 frets higher from C on the 3rd fret, which would be 3 plus 12 equals 15. This means that you can also find C on the 15th fret of the A or 5th string. When moving from the G to B strings, we need to make a 1 fret adjustment. We saw how an identical note is 4 frets lower. We can subtract 4 from 12 to get 8 half steps or 8 frets. This means that when we move from the G to the B string, an identical note is either 4 frets down or 8 frets up. Alright guys, there you have it. Please make sure to subscribe and check out all of the other videos on our channel. Check out the Nandi Method website, pick up Guitar Intervals Unleashed on Amazon, as well as the NANDI-Chorder, which I will have a link to in the description.